Welcome to the Not Alone with Melissa-Sue Methven. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Brett Gilbert, which is so dear to my heart, has become a friend now. And he is a clinician. He is also an educator. He is also a motivator in dentistry. Had the pleasure to be on his podcast on the cusp in September, I believe, September, October of last year. And he's just been a big supporter of my journey of growth along the way and a big supporter of my book and my message. So here he is today. And I want to share his message and his story because I think it'll make an impact in the dental community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. And yes, a big fan of all the great work you're doing. Loved your book. Loved having you on the podcast, learning more about your story. And just honestly, Melissa, watching you live your life at this point and the way that you're documenting it, it's truly an inspiration. And I'm just really excited to chat with you and to help anyone out there because I think we all go through struggles in life. We all go through triumphs, but the world is really our inner world. The world inside of your own skin is the one part of this world we can control. And I think that the more that we can learn about how to, cultivate the proper environment for ourselves, that's really the key to feeling great every day. And it seems like with all of what you're doing, you're really able to do that. And I really admire it.
Yes, thank you. I love that you mentioned that because our environment and going within, I've really had to do that throughout my healing. And I know you have as well, and how important to cultivate that healthy environment. And I, I have to work at it on a constant basis. And sometimes I kind of pivot a little bit. I'm like, oh, I need to come back in alignment and become in harmony. So I would just love to share a little bit about your story because I know, you had a time in your life as a dentist that it was so overwhelming and close to burnout. So I'd love to kind of share that journey, but also how you stepped into healing and the grieving and finding that how you came along to do that process to where you're at now.
Yeah. So I think burnout, has a lot of different definitions, but really, I think it's really an individual thing. I think we all experience our own version of burnout because the factors and all of the circumstances that, kind of weigh you down ultimately lead you there. But dentistry is ripe for burnout because it's a profession where you're always giving. You're giving to literally everyone. And most of the time, we don't give back to ourselves. We don't invest in ourselves. And that was me. So my burnout, my first, like, where I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm burnt out. In fact, I started to Google the symptoms of burnout. And when I got to BUR, I realized before I even got a result that I was burnt out. And so I was 43 years old. I had been in practice already for 15 years. And I just really had this moment where I was actually, you can appreciate it as a speaker, Melissa, but I was on this stage and I was giving a lecture to like 1,500 other endodontists. And it was a big moment. And I performed really well, but I had made a big mistake on one of my slides. And it was sort of an egregious error. And when I stepped off the stage, immediately I didn't get the reaction or faces that I had expected. It was clear that I had upset the apple cart with my mistake. It was pretty glaring. And that immediately like forced me to kind of look at myself because I thought to myself, how did I make such a big mistake? Like I had gone through the presentation so many times, but I started to just recognize how hard I had been grinding and for how long. So one of the things about being a dentist is the financial stresses of it are real. So if you're out there and you're like, hey, I want to do a little bit better for my family than maybe what my office can provide, maybe you're looking at more opportunities, whether it's lecturing or teaching or all these different things. And I had been pushing myself so hard for so long. But what I had been doing really is just pouring my cup empty. And I never refilled it. I didn't even know what that looked like.
Yeah.
We don't
So how
learn
was
about it.
your environment then? Like, were you just just grinding, like the balance. There was no balance. It was all work. You had no time because you were finding. So you mentioned financial pressures with your dental practice at the point. Did you have your own at that point?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I just, it's just like the idea that, there was so many other things that I could do also, not just the financial pressure, but almost just the desire for more fulfillment. I think we climb this mountain of becoming a doctor or a dentist. And sometimes you get there and you're like, no, like, is this it? Like, this is the whole thing? And you're looking for more fulfillment. And sometimes teaching can bring that, or, lecturing, or, whatever your project might be. And so I was trying to diversify. The problem is as I diversified, I was spreading myself really thin, and I just didn't have the knowledge or the practices to rejuvenate, to refill, to refuel. And so I just literally had this vision of like pouring my cup, and there was literally no more drops for anyone, including myself. And so that was the beginning of my recognition that I think I couldn't sustainably continue to live the way that I was living. And that led me, how the universe is, Melissa. It just, the right person just kind of pops out of the door at the right time. And one of my childhood friends took me by the hand. I always have this vision of him sort of taking my hand, and he had done some intensive emotional intelligence training, and it had created incredible shifts in his life. And he sort of led me by the hand into emotional intelligence training. And as you mentioned about the healing process and all of the work, right? The work that we can all do to help ourselves, I dove headfirst in. And I did some intentional and intensive workshops in emotional intelligence. And immediately I started to recognize how much trauma I was carrying, how much shame I was carrying from my childhood, things that I would never have been able to see otherwise. And I started to strip the bandages off. And through that process, I found just an incredible amount of healing. And they say with trauma, it's almost like a shard of glass that's buried in your chest, right? So every time you kind of like allow life to kind of come at and through you, it has to work around your trauma to go through you. And then something triggers. It could be a thought. It could be something someone says. It could be something that happens that reminds you. And all of a sudden, that shard of glass cuts you all over again. So if we don't address, feel, scratch at, dig in to get the trauma to come out, which it will evaporate in some ways, then we just sit with it and it impacts everything that we do. And I was carrying a lot of those pieces of glass. So my healing process was really going deeper, really looking at like what had caused me pain, what I was holding on to in terms of resentment, maybe some traumatic memories and things like that. And amazingly, as that trauma lifts out of you, it creates space. And you can fill that space with whatever you choose to, whether it's joy, creativity, more love, service, whatever that is. And that was kind of my process. It was the emotional intelligence training that opened the door for me to heal and really find the version of myself that A, is what I believe to be the most authentic version, and B, to be the version of myself that has the opportunity to really live up to, or exercise the full potential that I was born with, to be on this earth and contribute to others. And so it's been a powerful journey, and I would recommend for anyone, but especially clinicians, look into it. Melissa, we just started a program called Heal Thyself, which is specifically emotional intelligence training for clinicians, because it had such a profound effect on my life that I wanted to create an outlet, because no one talks about this in dental school. No one talked about this in my residency. You basically just get out and you grind, and that's all you know. And with this education, with this training, with this healing, then all of a sudden the world started to open up to me. The relationships I had got stronger. My ability to manifest and create, this podcast that you see behind me, this program I'm describing, some of the other online education programs that I offer are all products of me doing this healing work. And I see much the same in what you're doing. And that's what I'm so grateful to see. It's like seeing that you're doing your breath, you're contributing to others, you're doing retreats, you wrote a beautiful book, you are so openly speaking your testimony on what was like that moment, like is like the worst fear anyone could ever have happen to your family. And how do you respond? Right? Many would just react, but see, you responded and you did that in a way in which you could cultivate this beautiful life for yourself and your kids. And so I'm just so grateful for you and so grateful to have you in my life.
Oh my gosh, likewise. Thank you. And I love that you're saying that because that's what I say. I had to really go within and heal all the parts of myself. It go back to I'm 2 years old, that 5 years old Melissa. What is she holding on? These patterns that keep showing up because I'm like, well, what? Because I revisited to, okay, what went wrong and what Scott, where was he at too? And just the understanding. And a lot of the times, you feel like you're spiraling and there's something off, but a lot of times people think, oh, I need to change this. But a lot of times you have to pause and go within and heal those parts of you because so you could be more in a harmony and alignment, your life path. A lot of us are sometimes we want more clarity, but you can't have clarity until you truly kind of declutter and make room, like you said, right? I've had to really, I always find myself so clear when I am, not drinking alcohol. I'm doing my breath work. I'm in prayer. I am meditating. I'm also sitting in stillness and writing. I write out the emotions and then it just draws in more clarity as to my old past patterns. I don't get so confused. Oh, is this the old 5-year-old Melissa making these decisions, or is because that keeps her safe? Or is it more God, the sole purpose, because I feel like I keep getting these whispers, these guidance. I live my life very much, guided. And to stay in alignment, I have to make sure everything, even my gut biome, oral biome, all of that is in alignment so it doesn't cause any clutter. So I love that you have this program as well to guide people in because I feel that this is not talked about in dental school or in dentistry. And it's very much needed because you guys give and give so much. I'm much a believer of energy exchange. And, even as a dental hygienist, you've got people's heads right here, your solar plexus, and you're taking on their fear. There's so much fear in dentistry. And I feel dentists, they are such, they want to hold that for their patients. But if you go home and have no way to express what just happened, I know so many times would be a dental office and people are angry and screaming at you and they're mad. Or I'd have, patients go, oh, dentist, all they want is your money, they're just mad because they're scared. It hurts and they don't understand what's going on in the mouth. And luckily now we have the big visuals. We could show them a bit more and have an understanding. But I truly feel that if we can help the dentist to be in harmony and whole in their body, they can treat their patients better and show up better for their patients and their family at home. Me being a wife of a dentist too, I get it. You go to work and you give and give and give so much. And then when you get home, you have nothing else to give to your beautiful children, your wife. And I understood that, but it's still hard. It's still hard to never have that partner there. They have nothing to give. So it's crucial to teach, anyone in the health industry, where you give so much of yourself, these tools that you're creating, which I love. And I know for me, that's breath work. I started with Dr. Delphine creating these dental retreats where we allow them to fully give back to themselves, the self-love, the space to go within and see their sole purpose. I know so many dentists too, sometimes they feel a little bit stuck, kind of like what you said, there's something else calling them and they can't feel why. Like they've got the beautiful practice. Like I know my husband, he's got great practice. Everything's going well. We got the house. We've, a wife and 2 kids, but there was still something that wasn't right and spiraling. And a lot for him too was going back to those traumas, those past wounds. And I wish I would have known the extent of I know now for what's out there for healing modalities, because this would have been so life-saving for him, to do some of the work that we've done, you know. So I'd love to hear, what do you do on a daily basis now to stay in harmony, or and how do you feel do you find that you treat your patients differently now, knowing what you know, and that you're so much more in harmony?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can. Okay. Sorry. It flipped the screen. Yeah. So a couple things just to reflect before I jump into that. One of the things I think about, like in reading your book and being on the podcast, and I listened to you on Mike DeLuke's podcast. The concept of when you're the doctor, it's sometimes like you feel almost like you're either not entitled to, or it's maybe going to impact your reputation or something if you seek help, right? Whether it's therapy or whatever. So the concept that I've sort of developed with my partners, I've got two incredible partners, Chris Hawker and Dr. Julie Wilkes, in Heal Thyself, is exactly what the title says. Well, you are already a powerful healer. I know from the book, Scott was a powerful healer. He knew how to manage people. He made people laugh. When he was in the office, he was a superstar, right? But outside of the office, the struggles would catch up. And so the concept is if we are already healers that are powerfully healing everyone else, what if we turn that healing power to ourselves? And so that's where the heal thyself, it's hopefully a smoother barrier of entry, is to think to yourself, well, I'm going this program, I can heal myself, but I don't need anyone else to heal me, kind of thing. And so that's where all of the things, the breath work, the emotional intelligence, we really look at it as like resilience training, right? How do you become more resilient to the challenges and the pressures? Because to your point, Melissa, to me, one of the greatest saviors of this work that I've done and what I hope to help others with is exactly what you said. You're dog tired at the end of the day. You've absorbed so much energy. You have given so much. But how can you shift, whether it's breath, whether it's meditation, whether it's music, whether it's dancing, whether it's just moving about and just getting your energy shifted? How can you walk in that door and not miss out on these precious moments we have with our kids when they're kids, right? When these precious moments we have with our partner, when we still have a partner that loves us, etc. When we're all healthy. Like, these are all the things that I think life is about, these opportunities to be with and be with the people that you love. And it's sad for me that most clinicians come home too tired to even take part in it. And so that's where I'm really excited about the opportunity to offer this type of programming. But to answer your question, how does it translate? Is I believe that when a healthy human being that is investing in themselves, the practices I use, I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is sit on a cushion. I do breath work. Melissa gave me this beautiful, beautiful drum that I'll beat. I'll beat the drum. I do some type of cardio. I'll do yoga. I'll do meditation. I'll journal. And then I always finish my shower ice cold. That's kind of my.
Me too. We have the same similar mornings.
I love it. I love it. So I do all that before I take a shower, before I get dressed to go to work. So now here I am walking into the operatory at 8 a.m. And I believe that a clinician that is investing in themselves, filling their cup, right? That time I described, and that's my time. That's time that's devoted to me. I don't address my kids or my wife at that time. That's for me. And now I walk into the operatory and I'm a human being that's feeling really good and ready to serve and heal others. But unfortunately, most of us, and myself before this transition in my life, it's more carrying in the burdens, carrying in the stress, carrying in the dread of the day, almost like you're carrying around these heavy suitcases. So that doctor walks into the operatory, and in my opinion, there is no way they can render the same level of care as the doctor that walks in healthy and at least working on themselves. Because in order to, like you said, take in that energy, feel and have empathy toward your patient, keep an open mind. I mean, even as a hygienist, you could be in someone's mouth and something gets hairy really quick, and you feel that pang of adrenaline and fear. And did I mess up? Did I hurt someone? All of these things. And that's where the resilience comes in. You have to be able to take a breath, clear your head, move forward, stay on track, positive affirmations, everything is okay. And these are all skills that we have to first learn, but also practice. And so that's really where I'm at right now, is sort of trying to be the bridge between the precision of dentistry and science and cutting edge technology, and bridging into the soul and the self and growth, and being able to truly enjoy this journey of life. Because as you know better than anyone, just like that, it can end. And the reality is I want to squeeze the juice out of every day. And what I've come to realize, and what we've realized as we've run this Heal Thyself program, is when the doctors cycle through it, the biggest takeaway is I remember what's important to me. What's important to me are those people living in my house with me. And I want to make sure that I can be the best dad, mom, sister, brother, son, daughter, whatever it looks like, friend, because those relationships are the legacy. The rest of it is just sort of just life in action.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And so, so true. Cause I still remember telling Scott, I said, cause I could tell he's so overwhelmed. I said, I, want my husband back. I want a father for the kids. And I said, let's downsize. All these things didn't matter. Sell the practice. You can become an associate. Let's downsize the house. Like, cause I'd rather you be healthy, start taking care, have more time to take care of yourself, cause that is truly what matters most. It's not all the things, the fancy, shiny things. It's us, our family, our connections, and our health. So that's always. And do you find, I'm pivoting now, but you made a point where dentists, they're very much perfectionists, right? And I remember Scott very, very much so being a perfectionist, the most beautiful crowns and all the things. And in one patient, getting mad at you or changing that energy can shift so much, can really trickle through your day. He could see 30, 40 patients that day, but that one he'll remember, right? So learning even those tools on your day, like even like a minute to take that breath, a certain, to calm your nervous system, or cut that line of whatever that person projected to you, to be able to release it then, so you can continue on with the rest of your day, not holding on to that, uh, so I feel like a lot of dentists are perfectionists, and that's the hard part, where they can have a hard time moving on,
Yeah.
and it just spirals in their head, like, oh, I should have done that differently, or that didn't go the way I wanted to, and they that sit in that shame or that fear, or if the patient goes home in a lot of pain and they call, you just kind of take all that on. So I am so excited for the program that you're doing, and I hope that a lot of the dentists listening, and actually I'm speaking at a dental retreat next in Utah next week, and I'm hoping I'm going to tell them to listen to this podcast, and hopefully I know, actually not hopefully, I know many will join that program and it will change their lives.
Yeah, and that's an extension of what my podcast is about. You see the tooth here and everything, and of course I'm a dentist, but this podcast is about the human being inside the scrubs, inside the white coat. This is about how you can find your own version of fulfillment in life, because what happens a lot, Melissa, and contributes to a lot of the suicide rates and the depression, anxiety that we all read about, is we work so hard, and in this generation spend so much money on the education. And it's sort of like you're climbing this mountain, and you figure that when you get to the top after all this work and you plant that flag, that life is going to be blissful. But what happens oftentimes is that we find that oftentimes the top of this mountain feels a little bit empty. And so, what I want to reiterate, and what the podcast is about, is the fact that this doesn't have to be your only mountain. And what we found is through the podcast, which is, listening to stories. I do a number of solo episodes, but stories, journeys, how others have navigated all of the things we're talking about. Some have chosen just to leave the profession. And oftentimes that can lead to something beautiful. Other times, maybe you realize, maybe I didn't really need to leave. Maybe I needed to shift my mindset or my practices so that I was healthier. But I want to just speak real quickly, Melissa, on what you were talking about with perfectionism, because I recently did an episode that is I called the imperfect cocktail, which is the dentist's perfectionism and then coupled with their own self-judgment. So just to your point, you do 12 amazing root canals, but if one of them had one little thing wrong with it, that's what I go home with. How is that right? Right. And so what I want to encourage dentists to consider. First of all, perfectionism is a disease. There's no question. I suffer from it. I battle it every single day. But when we couple it with our own self judgment, we trap ourselves in constant misery. And so the idea is to give more grace to yourself. You are, again, a human being inside the scrubs, inside the office, holding the handpiece. And you have to recognize that being human is just that. It's going to have moments where you aren't perfect. And in fact, you're never going to be perfect. So I like to think of it like this: instead of using perfectionism as the goal or the baseline, let's just flip that out with excellence. We can all be in excellence every day, because excellence can be your effort, it can be your attitude, it can be the way you respond, it can be how resilient you are. It doesn't necessarily mean that your crown prep and your margin was perfect or the root canal was perfect. So I want to encourage clinicians, in order for us to sustain ourselves and continue to be healthy and serve, we have to accept that mistakes, errors are going to happen, but that can still be acceptable in the terms of being excellent. If we have perfectionism as the only goal, we will constantly fail. And so I just want to encourage that flip, because I think mindset, more than anything else, will either make or break your pleasant or miserable day as a clinician. It's really all in between your ears.
Yeah, I love this reflection because I also think back to when we'd have associates come in, new students, new grad, and they were so hard on themselves, how long they would take to do a crown, or if they do mistakes and they wouldn't know. And Scott was always so great to take them on and mentor them. But I think new grads could be really hard on themselves. They want to be perfect right away, right after school, because I spent all this time in school. I should be perfect now. But it doesn't work that way. It takes time to perfect it, and you have to give yourself grace. So I think that even though Scott was really good at things, sometimes, yeah, the root canals didn't work out. There was something else, and and that was always really hard. He'd take it to heart and be like, try and really figure it out. And so I love that you addressed that. Another podcast I just listened to, yours, I really loved, was about the digital break. That And when it was your birthday, right? Your 50th birthday celebration, you took a digital break and you recommended a book. What was it called again? I forget.
Called How to Calm Your Mind by Chris Bailey.
Okay, I need to read that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Point, because after I wrote my book, my publisher's like, you got to put yourself out there, go on social media, and this, get it uncomfortable. But it takes so much time. And I realized it took away some of the time for what's really more important, as far as uh, the breath work, me really, the working family, all this stuff. But I thought, oh, I need to put in that time. So now I've realized that I'm my time is more worth doing, what my purpose is right now, with the aligning people to their soul purpose and decluttering. I've been really felt called to talk a lot about the oral biome and gut biome relation to chronic illness. As a dental hygienist, I'd see the long list of medications people are on and seeing the symptoms, and how getting to the root cause is really important. Actually, I'm going to be working with biological dentists here in Arizona and really diving into getting more to the root cause. But also, I like taking breaks from social media too, because those were the dopamine hits, right? And you talked about that in your last podcast. And I was like, oh, I've been feeling that a lot, to just remove myself. Like when I went to Maui, I took my kids, and I felt it was our 3-year anniversary since we lost Scott. And I felt called to do an ash ceremony back to where he passed in Maui. And then I completely felt like detaching myself. Okay, turn off my phone. Sometimes I'd leave my phone in a hotel room, turn it off airplane mode, and how good I felt. How good to be just solely present with my family, my children. They need me. They still, very much co regulate with me. They're still grieving. They're still going through a lot. They're doing well, but still, it's an ongoing thing. And with grief. Now, so I've realized I need to, take breaks. So I love that you touched base on that as much as this is how we reach so many. I mean, without me, this platform, I would have never met you. I would have never met Dr. DeLuke. Dr. Delphine, I wouldn't have made these connections, but it's finding again that balance, right? And I think life is all about balance, finding balance.
Yeah, yeah. So this hit me really powerfully because I had decided to do the detox on vacation. I knew I had 10 days, and I actually picked up the book in the airport. It was just sort of like an intuitive. I just had this sense that I would find the right book, and it was exactly what I needed because it really described how, in this age of digital interaction and the dopamine that we're getting, the hits from, seeing a text message or seeing that you have a new follower, or getting an email, or how many times, sometimes I check my email like 10 times in an hour. Why am I doing that? I'm seeking the dopamine hit. And so, but what I learned, which was really powerful, is our brains have a dopaminergic system, but they also have a here and now system. So the dopaminergic is function by dopamine. In the moment, it feels really good. You come home from a busy day at your clinic, you're already had a stressful day and you just want to relax. So you get on your phone, and in the moment, the scrolling and the dopamine makes you feel good. But collectively over time, it's actually a source of chronic stress. So instead of relaxing, you're actually pouring on more stress, which is pushing you further and further toward burnout. And the worst part, Melissa, is as you feed that dopamine system, it actually suppresses the here and now system. This system is serotonin, oxytocin. This is your natural calm. So you're feeding the dopamine, suppressing your calm, and we wonder why we're all so agitated and stressed out all the time. So in the process of, like you said, putting the phone away, literally out of sight, out of mind, now all of a sudden, as the dopamine hits come down, the serotonin and the oxytocin start to rise back up. And I've been able to, not as successfully as a total detox, but I've been able to be more balanced, as you said, and I have a greater sense of my own natural calm. So I highly recommend, especially on those really busy clinical days where you're stressed out, come home and put your phone away. 25 years ago, no dentist was picking up their phone and getting all this chronic stress from dopamine. So put it away. Spend time outside, take a walk, move, shake, run, work out, be with your family, cuddle with your loved one, do what is analog, right? Living more analog instead of digital. Writing. I found, like, sometimes when I feel stressed now, I just think about writing. Like, I think about what I would write in my journal right now, and just that sensation of touching the page with the pen and being in the analog, in the present, is actually super supportive. So thanks for mentioning that. It was a powerful thing for me, and the book was like the perfect companion at the time. So if you're interested in this and you're like, man, I am really like so much more stressed out now than I used to be, it's probably the dopamine that's pushing you over the top.
Yeah, I needed to hear that. When I listened to it, it really hit home because I noticed that shift when I went to Hawaii and needed that break. And I also, now that you talk about it with Scott, that was the first thing he would do. And he'd lay there for hours, in front of his phone. Either it was, answering emails from the lawyers, and because he was in a lawsuit, and it was just strolling, strolling and strolling. And it just, like you said, the serotonin, I just came back from a health optimization summit, and that was a big talk as the gut. Dr. Stephen Gundry, he said 80% of serotonin is made in the gut. And so if you're not allowing that to pile up and get to your gut brain, uh, you know, you won't feel the natural serotonin, and you'll keep wanting those little dopamine hits, like you mentioned. So being really careful how much time you're spending on social media is hard, because when it's your part of your job and your career and marketing. But now I've actually decided to, I'm going to hire somebody else to kind of take care of that because it takes away from it's truly important right now. I've got another book coming. I'll be writing in June.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yes, it's in it. And the minute this happened when I wrote my last book, because writing is so healing. Like I say, to write out your day, that's like releasing. That's another way to express, just like breath work is. And so, and the minute I said yes to writing another book, now I'm getting kind of messages as to what that looks like. And it's a lot bigger than I thought. And I need to really concentrate in sitting, in starting journaling what is coming through. And I need to remove myself more than the social media, like still be present, but I can hire someone to kind of take care of that so I can concentrate on what I know is more important at this point, finding more balance, because it was taking away from kind of my direction a little, you know?
And in this world, we can't put it down, but we can create boundaries around it. And that's what I found has been the most helpful is just creating some boundaries, but most especially when you have a really stressful day, is don't kid yourself into thinking that the numbing that you're getting off of the dopamine is helping you because it's not. And that would be to me the one of the most important times to remember I'm putting my phone away because I'm stressed out as I'm walking in the door. And an hour later, you're going to feel better. And that's, it's not just the serotonin, but the oxytocin, which is that neurotransmitter of connection. So the oxytocin, when you're spending time with your kids or your partner or friend or your neighbor, whatever, but being in the analog world instead of everything, it kills me. I see my girls, they're just, oh my gosh, they're just glued to the phone, or sometimes they have a phone and a tablet and a computer going at the same time. And look, this is the world that they've grown up in. But I can't help but think about the detrimental effects, even though I can't convince them to put them down, and I'm not going to force them to. But at the same time, as the kids learn from us, they're watching. And so the more we can demonstrate, that's probably more powerful than you should do this, is more I'm doing this. I'm not talking about it. I know you're going to notice, and I'm hoping it's going to rub off.
Well, isn't that the way for anybody? You could just be that example, start walking, doing the work. And then instead of saying, hey, you need to do this work, hey, you need to do this, just start doing it. And people will start noticing your shifts. Like for me, my new thing is I don't sleep with my phone in my room. I leave it in the kitchen now, and that's my thing. So then I'm not, oh, I can't fall asleep. I'm just going to pick up my phone. No, after a certain time, it's gone. It's in the kitchen, and that's kind of my new routine. And I don't even look at it right away in the morning. I'll do all my routines that we talked about. And then I'll like, okay, I check in because I realize it's so overwhelming of everything I need to get done. And yeah, so I think it's just those little changes, those little tweaks make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're doing a great job in speaking about this and helping others see it. And of course, even just your reflection back about Scott with his phone, that's powerful because the one thing that you've done beautifully in honoring him is using his story as a way to resonate with others that are probably on a similar track. And that's something that I think about a lot too, because the testimony that you've put out with your book and the podcast and everything you're doing, it gives me reason to start to be creative. Well, how can I help my colleagues? Where do we get them where it hits them with the most resonance? And this is one area, emotional intelligence training is another, just better practices and ultimately having more resources. And I will say this, things have gotten so much better in even being able to talk about this in a dental setting. When I do my lectures, it's always on endodontics, but there's always personal growth sprinkled in. There's always going to be a meditation in my lectures. Like there's always going to be this opportunity to talk about, we all want to be an excellent clinician, but you can't be like a robot and go without ever like stopping for a breath. But that breath is so powerful that it might just be all that you need to keep going. So just remembering, I always like to use cues. I always say to dentists, how many times do you wash your hands in a day? Well, remember that every time you wash your hands, take a few deep breaths. right? It's just an easy way to connect one thing with the other. Because as Delphine says so beautifully, and she was on my podcast, it's hygiene, energetic hygiene, just as important as flossing your teeth. And you can think about that as you're washing your hands, you're using your breath to clean and wash your energy at the same time.
Wow, that I love that. That's fantastic that you're teaching people that and getting on stage. And because I do think, are you also seeing a shift like in dental school? Like, are they, or I know, you're speaking and they're doing that at different conferences, but is it getting into dental school at this point?
Not really. No, I'd love more opportunities to be in the dental schools, but where we do have the opportunity is the learning and sharing on social media. So, that's another reason why, I'm kind of created this account where talk as much about personal growth as I do about endodontics. And the hope is more people are going to know me from endodontics and come to learn that. But if you want to be a great clinician, like I said, your mindset is going to control most of it. So you have to recognize that investing in your own wellness, investing in your own inner peace is going to translate into being a better clinician. Not only that, but you have the opportunity interacting with so many people through the day where you can actually leave this little bit. Some people take a little piece of your energy too. We absorb our patient's energy, they're absorbing ours. And my goal is if a patient leaves my practice and they've taken just a little spark of positivity away from me, that may translate into their workspace, into their house. So the ripple, that's it. The ripple effect, that's it. So especially on days when you're feeling down, just remember like what a beautiful job and responsibility we have as clinicians and healers is that it's not just the X's and O's, it's not just the clinical treatment, it's the experience that a patient has in your presence that can be just as powerful because we all know our physical body can be fixed, it heals, it's beautiful, but it's that emotional body, it's that spiritual body that we're probably just not giving enough to. If we do, it all starts to merge together and we start to feel good. We start to love living our lives because, as we talked about, it's short. You never know when it's going to end. And boy, don't you want to have like the best experience you can this time around?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Live a very fulfilled, like allow more love in and happiness and joy. And I think people want that, right? A lot of people say they want more peace, more calm, but how to seek that is actually investing in themselves, that self love and digging deeper. It's not so much getting busier. A lot of times is actually getting more still, and going within. And so yeah, this has been so fantastic. Everything that you've shared, this is beautiful. I love the work that you're doing, and what an honor. And I know I'll follow your journey, and I know you're creating this ripple effect in the industry that we really need. And I'm continuing to be a big part of that too. I know that's kind of my calling to change, to bring more hope and light in the dental industry, and because then the dentists can treat their patients more in alignment as well. The patients will benefit from that if the dentist is in alignment. And so it just has that ripple effect, especially that in the mouth, we see is such a root cause of chronic illness, as we all know. And that if we can help the patient control these chronic illness that keep showing up in their mouth and have the right dentist to do so that's in alignment, then it just brings them more joy and happiness and alignment all around them. So I just want to say thank you so much for being on here today and taking the time out of your busy day, and maybe share how people can find you and follow you. I don't know, listen to you on your podcast on the cusp.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so my website, drbrettgilbert.com, is sort of a jump pad to all the things that I'm working on. Again, the podcast On the Cusp. And you can find our Heal Thyself program at tailwindtrainings.com, which we can link up in the show notes. If you have any questions, you can always DM me on Instagram. I'm at Dr. Brett Gilbert. So Dr. Brett Gilbert, you can find me anywhere. I'm the same, across all the platforms. But Melissa, real quick, if I could, I just want to share a quick story about you and about, the type of person that you are. So Melissa and my really dear soul sister, Delphine, they've connected, and Delphine is a sound healer. And, I know that Melissa, you're super into breath work and sound healing. And my mom passed away just a couple of months ago. And, obviously, if anyone's been through it, you understand. Obviously, we all have had experience with grief and loss. And I'm putting all my practices in, trying to, keep the vibes high, even though I'm really feeling a lot of grief. And then all of a sudden, I get this package in the mail. And I had no idea what it was. It was from Melissa, and I opened it up, and it was this most beautiful buffalo drum. I meant to have it here with me during the podcast, but it's down by my seat where I do my breathing. And I just want to express, number one, how much it meant to me that you thought of me. But on top of that, when I beat this drum and you feel the frequency and the vibration, it actually hits me in the chest and the face and the head and the ears. And I want to express that this sound energy has actually been so incredibly healing for me. And it's something that I really look forward to. And so, again, just thinking about living in the analog, sometimes putting the phone down, picking up something like a little drum or something else that, can help bring you into the present moment is so important in our healing journey. And that was something that Melissa just, I don't know what made you think to send that to me.
Just felt called. I saw your grief. I can feel it. And I know grief, we all go through it, and grief happens because we're ready for that next growth period, and we need to sit in it. And the best way to sit in it, a drum, it goes to the heart, and your heart was broken. So drumming is to the heart. And I know for my kids, that's what they go for. They love my drum. And actually, I bought them, we haven't done it yet, but their own drum, and they'll paint it, whatever they want to paint, and they'll become their own drum. And I did just know, yeah, the frequencies and how healing that is. I just felt called. It was, I just follow my intuition. I was actually with Dr. Delphine in Sedona, and I said, I need to go stop at a store here, a music store. And I go in there with Dr. Preya. She's the whole tooth dentist from Dallas. I said, I need to go into this store. I need to find this dentist a drum. And I saw this beautiful drum that was purple and blue. And I was like, that's calling me. This is the one.
And my favorite colors, like it was so divine. So I just want to acknowledge you, Melissa, number one, for being so thoughtful and for even having the ability to act on your intuition. And then just to say how grateful I am, because not only did I appreciate the gesture, but the actual drum has become such a big part of my daily healing. And I literally just can't thank you enough. I feel honestly emotional just talking about it, but it was just so beautiful. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I just cannot express to you how much it's meant to me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure, and it's such an honor. And one day I'll have to, meet you in person. I know you're in Chicago, and I love.
Yeah, but we come to Arizona a lot. So the next time I'm in Arizona, we'll for sure get together with Delphine. And I got a whole crew out there for us to get together with.
We could do breath work. Delphine will do her sound healing, and
Oh, yeah.
it'll be great.
Sounds great.
So much, and I'll put everything in the show notes so everyone can find you.
Awesome. Thank you. And good luck with all your endeavors. Super proud of you.
I appreciate it. That means a lot. Thank you.